So much chaos, so much happening, and through it all, Paolo Banchero was cool as a cucumber. How the Orlando Magic scored another big win over the New Orleans Pelicans in a chaotic road game. It's time for Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is April 4th, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the expert and site editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, the Orlando Magic play a chaotic game against the New Orleans Pelicans. So much happening, so much that could have gone wrong, and yet the Magic keep their poise and win the game. We'll talk about how Paolo Banchero set the tone for the team coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. As you can tell, I am here on the road. I'm in my hotel here in New Orleans after the Magic's 117-108 win. I did notice, and I didn't find this out till after I finished recording, that my audio did cut out. My travel mic is okay, not great. So I apologize for that. So I apologize if there's any technical difficulties, if I sound a little bit different, certainly look a little bit different with writing here. But look, this was a fun one. Like this was a fun basketball game, and certainly the kind of game the Orlando Magic like to play. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that physicality on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic from Charlotte. But this was a game that felt very much like a playoff game. And look, we're trying to get this Magic team to get as much of these kinds of experiences as they can. And one of the things that's going to be important is understanding the assertiveness and aggression that it will take to succeed in the playoffs. Plain and simple. What it's going to take to win in the postseason is something very, very different. And so what we saw in this game was the Magic have to battle these wild waves. And I do think it's really important, or I do think it is notable to start at the head of the snake, at the head of the table. It is WrestleMania week. Everything for this team, as much as maybe we don't want to put this all on him because he's still so young, but everything for this team and everything for any team, especially when you get to the playoffs, starts with your lead player, starts with your team leaders. And whether it's fair or not, whether it's the right thing to do or not, this team does look to Paolo Banchero and does look to Franz Wagner as their leaders. You know, Franz said it. I asked Franz after the game. He said, it has been impressed upon us, and we have been told that we have to step up, be more vocal, set the tone for this team. And that's something that Paolo said that he's actually been struggling with of late. He kind of came out flat out, said it after the Clippers game. I need to play better. And Paolo had a rough homestand. He only averaged like 18 points per game during the homestand. He averaged 20 in the 3 losses, but he did not kind of elevate his game, and certainly struggled to elevate his game in kind of the 4 middle games of that homestand that felt like they really mattered. And so Paolo said after the game that he told one of the coaches that I know I need to step up, and I know I need to play with more intensity, more fire, more focus, whatever the case is. Let me get the exact wording since I'm here and looking at it. He said, it's time for me to get back into that mode and try to finish these last 7 strong and go into the postseason with some momentum. He wanted to be aggressive. Of course, things didn't work out quite that way right off the jump. Paolo missed his first 7 shots. Most of them were good looks, right around the basket or open shots. He missed his first 7 shots. And that is a big thing to overcome. And especially for this Magic team that relies so much on him. This game felt very much like that first game against New Orleans and like so many of the games that Magic have played lately where they got off to slow starts and the shooting wasn't quite there. And their 2 stars, Paolo and Franz, didn't quite have the oomph. Didn't quite have it to get over the top. And, if there's been concern, and the Magic have still been winning, but if there's been concern as we get ready for the playoffs, it's that they don't have that extra gear. We don't know if they have that extra gear yet. That's the truth of it right now. We don't know if they have the gear that they're going to need. But this is the incredible thing about Paolo, and I think Franz has this too. They are usually pretty calm. And Paolo has admitted that his body language has got to be a little bit better, that he is, you could just watch him. If you've watched him enough, you know that he looks at the refs. He's sometimes a little slow getting up after he doesn't get a foul call. But even though he wasn't scoring, even though he wasn't making shots early in the game, he was being aggressive. He had 7 of his 13 free throw attempts in the first quarter. 13 free throw attempts is a big, big number. That's a good sign. That means he's being aggressive. He's getting downhill. I've noted it before. I don't want him taking a ton of threes. He took 6 threes. Not terrible in this game, but he got himself downhill into the basket. That's what the Magic need from him. And even though he wasn't making shots early, everyone had confidence in him that he was doing the right things, that he was putting himself in the right position to eventually have that big scoring breakthrough. It was only a matter of time. And that time finally came. That time finally presented itself. In the third quarter, Paolo scored 12 of his 32 points. He was breaking down double teams. He was getting to the hole. He was putting pressure and frustrating the Pelicans defense. He took over the game. And that's a big reason why the Magic were able to build as much as a 20-point lead. Why they were able to, I don't want to say coast through the fourth quarter, because that's not quite right. And we're going to talk about the chaos of the fourth quarter and the end of this game here in a minute. But the Magic just knew they could rely on the drumbeat. And I've said this a lot about Paolo. He is a drumbeat. He can be a drumbeat where, he's just going to steadily add points and he's going to get into a groove and he's going to hit a bunch of shots and there's going to be nothing the defense can do about it. That's what makes Paolo so interesting and such a dynamic and intriguing player. Because he has this ability to take over games. This was his 10th 30-point game of the season. Again, we haven't seen that from a Magic player in a very long time. He knows he has this in him, and he knows, like the team on Monday, he hasn't been playing up to the standard. But in a game that was physical, in a game that featured 2 teams desperate for wins, in a game where someone had to step up and make the play, someone had to be assertive, the Magic leaned on their star. And I don't want to, I've spent 9 minutes talking about Paolo. I don't want to leave Franz out of this either. Franz was the exact same way. He had 11 of his 24 points in the third quarter too. He made 3 of his 6 3-pointers. He was cool, calm, and collected too. The Magic understood that they had 2 very good options to get them shots in the fourth quarter to execute their offense. Franz hit this humongous shot that gave the Magic some breathing room after. Again, we'll talk about the chaos here in a minute. It was like last Thursday's game against the Pelicans, like the game against the Pelicans at Kia Center. This was just a really nice playoff intense win. This was just a game where the Magic had to prove their composure, prove their calm, and lean on their stars to set the tone. And they did that. And they delivered and they executed just like they're supposed to. This team is still growing. And Jamal Mosley is the first to say that these kinds of wins are a sign of this team's growth and a young team learning how to win. These kinds of games are really big for someone like Paolo Banchero too. Because Paolo was learning how to be a star at a playoff level when the intensity is high, when the crowd is against you like they were tonight. He is learning to elevate his game. And we're going to learn how much he can elevate that game in the playoffs. It's going to be the biggest challenge and biggest test for him. But he clearly has taken that step. And the Magic took that step with him, as they should, following a team leader. This game, this evening, was very chaotic. We're going to dive into all the chaos coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word for our friends over at Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports. From live games to highlights to in-depth analysis, Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball, the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV, especially with the playoffs coming up. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences too. Fire TV channels let you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports. From March Madness, NBA, MLB, and more, not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos too. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The sports calendar is loaded right now. NBA playoffs are almost in full swing. We're counting down to the playoffs. The NCAA tournament, both the men's and women's tournament, hitting their final four. Baseball season starting. You got Formula One, you got NASCAR, you got hockey in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So much going on, and FanDuel is making it even more exciting to get in on the action, because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet the tourney, MLB, NBA, NHL, and so much more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet a big win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel for your next listen. We all want the latest and greatest sports analysis and news. And if you turn to the bigger channels like ESPN, like Fox Sports, all you're going to be hearing is shouting and debating. Those have their place, but you're not going to learn anything. You're not going to get the expert advice. The Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news from local experts covering the biggest stories across the sports world. Best part is it's streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. That's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. No doubt about it, this was a playoff game. This was a game played with playoff intensity, playoff physicality, playoff, whatever you need to say about it. The Pelicans are fighting for their lives. They're trying to stay in the playoffs. They're trying to avoid the play-in tournament. The hopes of getting home court advantage are quickly fading. With the injury to Brandon Ingram, and now potentially a finger injury to Zion Williamson, which is why he wasn't in at the end of the game. The Orlando Magic obviously fighting for their spot in the playoffs too. And so these were two playoff teams playing really well. And the first half of this game was kind of a back and forth affair. The two teams played, really, really well and matched up really, really well. And, Orlando was the one that was able to dominate physically. And that tone, again, Paolo got to the line 7 times in the first quarter, made 5 of them. So missed some free throws still. But the Magic were able to be really physical. And you could tell New Orleans was bugged by it. And they picked up an early technical foul, complaining to the officials. It was a lot of frustration. There was a lot of frustration from New Orleans side. And eventually that chaos kind of spilled over. The first incident was Gary Harris trying to defend Zion, tripping and accidentally taking him out at the knees. Very dangerous play. Zion rightfully very upset, even though it was an accident, very clearly an accident. But, there was an uncalled shove from Jones on Jalen Suggs going for a rebound. And then the big one was in the fourth quarter. Jalen Suggs was going up for a layup, got, kind of bounced off of Zion Williamson, got sandwiched by another player, and really hit the floor hard. Came up clutching his side, clutching his arm, really hot, really upset that he was called for a travel and it wasn't a foul or a flagrant foul or anything like that. He picks up a technical foul. This is about 4:39. Cole Anthony picks up a technical foul. So 2 technical fouls. The Pelicans end up with a 4-point possession that actually made the game a little bit close, a little bit too close for comfort. Still double-digit lead, just like a 9 or 10-point game. But you could kind of feel the intensity there. You could kind of feel like that was a potential momentum-shifting play. And all credit to the Magic. They kept their composure. They kept their cool. It took them a little while. They never really fully expanded the lead back out. But New Orleans, they got it down to 6 at one point, but never really cut into the lead from there. Never really fully threatened. Orlando's offense was terrible at the end of the game. But Orlando's defense really held firm. And that's a credit to their composure. That is a credit to their understanding of who they are and what their identity is. How the Magic found that calm, and poise, again, that comes from their top players, that comes from their coach, that comes from the team just really rallying and finding it. Because the crowd was hot. The crowd was very upset with the officiating all night long. Orlando took 30 free throws. Like, they got to the line a lot. New Orleans had 28. So again, I find that argument a little specious. I would agree that the officiating was a little inconsistent. They probably were too hands-on early and then let too much go late. So both teams had a right to be frustrated. It was a physical game, and New Orleans was frustrated. Orlando was playing the way they want to play. They want to play physical. New Orleans looked very frustrated with the physical play. We'll talk more about the physicality on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. But the Magic here, I think, kind of found a little bit of themselves in the chaos. Again, it felt like they just got under New Orleans' skin. It felt like New Orleans wanted nothing to do with how physical the Magic were playing. And guess what? I think Jamal Mosley said this after the game. This is what the playoffs are going to be like. You're going to go through these wild swings and these wild up and downs and have to be able to compose and gather yourself. You're going to have to take a bad call and keep playing. And that's, something that is untested about this team. We don't know if the Magic can handle that. We don't know if the Magic can do that. It is undoubtedly one of the big questions this team is facing. Whether they can play that way, whether they can handle all of that. And that's going to be one of the challenges this team faces, without a doubt. It's going to be one of the challenges for the Magic to face this stuff down. Again, we don't know how they'll react, but games like this tell us that they'll be able to figure it out. That, in a game with high stakes, high intensity, hostile environment, questionable officiating, bad calls, how you react and what you do next matters so much. And the Magic found themselves in this chaos. And again, Paolo was a steady drumbeat. Franz was a steady drumbeat. They found their way. And again, I find that impressive. Personally, I find that impressive. I find that as, like Jamal Mosley said, a huge point of growth for this team. And it's only going to grow from here. These kind of games are only going to keep happening. So yes, Jalen Suggs, should be ticked off because he got thrown around. It would not surprise me if he pops up on the injury report or if he doesn't play on Friday. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to track him down after the game, just because they booked it pretty quickly after they're done with media. It wouldn't surprise me if he's on the injury report tomorrow. It wouldn't surprise me if he sits out Friday's game, to be perfectly honest. That was a hard fall. He played through it. He kept playing, and no doubt he will continue to do that because, again, he that's who he is. But this is a game where the Magic really had to rally themselves, check their emotions at times, and get the job done. And that's what they did. Like, again, it's super impressive. That's what they did. And they picked up a really, really nice win in the process. We'll go through the final box score and then quickly update the standings. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood is the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th, so the end of the month. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. The 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA is available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial, LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Okay, let's go through the final box scores. The Orlando Magic defeat the New Orleans Pelicans 117-108. Again, just a really strong game from Orlando. Again, this game all about composure and calm and keeping collected. Because like I said, the ending was chaotic. There's a lot going on at the end of this game. And the Magic had to kind of find themselves throughout it. They really did. And again, it's not an easy thing. They started off the game really poor. They scored only 24 points in the first quarter. They started off the game really poor. Their defense was okay, not great. It was tough. Paolo Banchero was over 7 to start the game. Missed the first 7 shots. And again, a lot of them were makeable shots. And so to continue to have that faith, have that belief that eventually those shots are going to go down is such a big deal. It's such an important thing. And so there's a lot for the Magic to like, a lot that they should be very, very happy with coming out of this game. Orlando does end up shooting 51.2%. So whatever offensive problems they had in the first quarter, they figured them out. And really the player on that was Mo Wagner. Mo Wagner with 18 points, 7 for 9 shooting off the bench. I'm going to mention him first because we've done Paolo, we've done Franz. We'll get to them a little bit more in a minute. But Mo Wagner really gave this team a huge lift. The bench, everyone on the Magic had a positive plus minus except for Wendell Carter and Franz Wagner. We'll get to all of them in a minute here too. But Mo was so good. Just doing the simple things that he does. Hard rolls to the basket, keeps the ball up, attacking the rim, just patient, isn't going to get knocked around. He changed the energy of this game and gave the Magic some offensive life, allowed them to kind of breathe a little bit, and that enabled them to get back into this game. We're going to start with the bench today. I'm going to give the bench some love. Jonathan Isaac with 8 points, 3 for 5 shooting. Excellent defense throughout. Maybe a little block happy. I'm gonna say that be the one thing I will criticize him defensively. He is chasing blocks a little bit too much. That gets him out of position, really. And it's not easy. It's easier said than done with Jonathan Isaac around. But really, the way you go after Jonathan Isaac now is you give him a hard jump stop, hard pump fake, let him get up in the air, and then pass the ball to the guy that he left to try and chase the block. Having said that, there were several times I noticed during the game where offensive players saw Jonathan Isaac creeping around and they thought better of it. That's the power that Jonathan Isaac has. It's not even just necessarily his ability to deter or block shots anymore. It's also his ability to prevent you from even taking the shot in the first place. Isaac is a really special defensive player and was just, again, fantastic throughout the game. Okay, let's talk Paolo. Paolo, 32 points, 10 for 24 shooting, 2 for 6 from beyond the arc, 10 for 13 from the foul line, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, did have 3 turnovers. 7 of the Magic's 13 turnovers came from Paolo and Franz. Definitely a lot for them to clean up there. But overall, again, once Paolo hit his groove in that second quarter and into the third quarter, there was no stopping him. New Orleans, we haven't seen this very much. A lot of teams like to bring delayed doubles and delayed traps and just kind of throw bodies at him. You don't typically see teams trap off of pick and rolls with Paolo. They don't do that. New Orleans did that. They had no other option. They had no other way. And it worked a little bit toward the end of the game. But, Paolo was able to pick his matchups, get guys on the block. The Magic did a great job clearing out those sides and putting him in positions where he can make quick decisions before the double could get to him. He played aggressively. He promised he would. He did. Had a great game. Same for Franz Wagner. The stars lead the way here. Franz Wagner, 24 points, 8 for 14 shooting, 3 for 6 from 3. Big deal for him. First time he's had 3 or more threes in a game since March 6th against the Wizards. So almost a month now between those kinds of games. And, now you have a game, this is Wagner's first game making even 2 threes in a game since the game against the Pelicans 2 weeks ago. 5 for 6 from the line, 5 assists, 4 turnovers again. Franz was really excellent. He's so good at getting the basket, so good at finishing around the rim. He hit this really tough runner, really a mid-range jumper, but really tough runner with about 3:01 to play, 3 minutes to play. That gave the Magic an 11-point lead. Again, just a calming shot. One of those big shots, at the buzzer of the shot clock that just exasperates the defense and just kills momentum. Like that is a big-time play from a big-time player. And, hopefully, again, you're only as good as your next, your only momentum is the next day's pitcher. You're only as good as your next game. Franz has to repeat this. He had 20 against Portland, played decent against Portland, had another nice game against New Orleans. Now we got to see it again against Charlotte. Wendell Carter, let's talk about him. 14 points, 5 for 7 shooting, 3 for 4 from 3, 11 rebounds, 3 assists. I would say this. I thought Wendell Carter came out very passive. And passive Wendell Carter is a bad Wendell Carter. We don't want passive Wendell Carter. We need Wendell Carter to be aggressive. We need him to look for a shot. We need him to be a player who, who's aggressive, willing to shoot, just has to be someone that's always on his front foot. That's what the Magic need from Wendell Carter. And I thought early on he was a little bit passive. I thought he was passing up shots that he needed to take, just trying to be a little cute with it, not being physical. And again, it's so much of this is about being physical. We're going to talk more about that tomorrow. He found it though. I want to give him that credit. One there early, he found it later on in the game and ended up having a really nice game. He had a couple big threes to just take the lid off the basket in the second quarter. Again, just, he's reliable. When he's on, when he's aggressive, he is a very high level center. He handled himself well against Jonas Valanciunas. Valanciunas finishes with 11.6 rebounds. That's pretty good against Valanciunas. It looked like Valanciunas was going to have a big game. At this point, Valanciunas only played 18 and a half minutes in a game where the Pelicans are shorthanded. They didn't feel like he could step out to the 3-point line. They ran a lot of zone. The Magic broke that zone down pretty quickly. In fact, they really took the lead because they were making shots over the zone, and it wasn't even threes. They were getting to the paint. Valanciunas' lack of mobility made that zone not really work, and the Magic's ability to spread the floor essentially took him off the floor. He's become unfortunately, and I like J-Val, he's become a bit of a dinosaur for at least elite level teams, which the Pelicans kind of hope they can be. Orlando shoots 51.2% from the floor, 13 for 32 from 3-point line, 22 of 30 from the foul line. 30 free throws is really good. But 8 misses, not so good. Didn't matter in this game, but you got to be aware of that. They get 7 offensive rebounds, 10 second chance points. They only have 48 points in the paint. That's been a big thing for me. I want to see them back up around 52. So it's the 5th straight game that the Magic have failed to hit their season average in points in the paint. But again, they won the paint 48-46. Win the paint, win the game. That remains the motto. Magic won the paint. They won the game. Quite simple. For the Pelicans, CJ McCollum turned out with 36 points on 10 for 24 shooting, 5 for 12 from beyond the arc. Got going a little bit later in the game, but Orlando generally, I thought, did a good job on him, just making him stay out on the perimeter. Larry Nance Jr. was setting these like really vicious physical screens. Did get called for it finally. Sprung McCollum open a few times. Magic lost him in transition a few times. But again, in the half court, the Magic's defense is pretty impossible to face. Like they're really good in the half court defensively. The way you beat the Magic, frankly, is force them to miss shots, force them to turn the ball over, get out in transition. The Pelicans had 22 fast break points. They scored 11 points off 13 turnovers. The Magic not turning the ball over was a huge factor in this game. Like 13 turnovers is a pretty good number for them. If the way you beat this Magic defense is you got to beat them in transition. You got to get them to miss shots, get out and run. You got to get them to turn the ball over, get out and run. That's how you beat this team, and New Orleans did do that. So playing against a set Magic defense, you're going to have a bad time, okay? You're going to have a bad time with that. So just a rough game for the Pelicans on that front. Zion Williamson ends up with 15 points, 7 for 16 shooting. Got to give credit to Paolo Banchero for the defense on him. It's a team effort, obviously, but Paolo got the main assignment on him. Struggled a little bit earlier. Like Zion was definitely trying to initiate contact. Paolo was taking bad angles, but after that first quarter, the Magic did a really good job bottling him up, making sure that there's a physical presence in front of him, making him feel that pressure, feel that physicality, keeping him away from the basket. He's going to get his shots, and he's a star player. They did not let him rumble downhill very often. And that's, they use their fouls strategically with him as well. But that's that. And he was 1 for 4 from the foul line. So that worked. But that's how you handle Zion Williamson, you just make sure he sees bodies in front of him. The Orlando Magic defeat the New Orleans Pelicans 117-108. As I kind of hinted at, chaos is all around us here in the playoff chase. Everybody the Magic needed to lose lost on Wednesday. So you had the Pacers losing. So the Magic opened up a 2.5 game lead on the Pacers for fifth. They are now pull ahead of the New York Knicks by a half game. They have the tiebreaker with them. The Cavs lose to the Suns. So now they're a half game behind Cleveland for third. The Milwaukee Bucks lose to the Memphis Grizzlies a night after losing to the Washington Wizards. They're now 2 games back of the Bucks with 6 to play. And the Magic have 2 more games with the Bucks directly. So these standings are going to be crazy. We're following them every night. It's chaotic. This is playoff basketball. The Magic are here, and pretty soon they'll be officially clinching their spot in the playoffs. We're probably still a week away. I think their magic number now is 5 to clinch the 6th seed. So 5 won't be Sunday. Can't be Sunday, I don't think. It might be Tuesday or Wednesday in Milwaukee. It might not be till Friday in Philadelphia, but we're getting closer to it. The Magic will officially clinch their spot here very, very soon. Like I said, win your games, take care of your business, and the standings will take care of itself. So the Magic getting a big win against the Pelicans is absolutely a big, big deal. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. You can, of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all phone-based podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. Relays on the Orlando Magic. Be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You, of course, find us there on Twitter at @OMagicDaily. Be sure also to check out my Patreon page, your Orlando Magic Hub. You can find that at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub for even more Magic content and analysis from me. You get extra articles and extra content there. Supporting that Patreon allows me to make trips like this one. I'm in my hotel room here in New Orleans. I'm getting ready to go to Charlotte tomorrow. So definitely check out my Patreon page, and please, if you choose, really thank you and appreciate your support. Allows me to take trips and give you the Magic coverage that I know Magic fans deserve. Now that you're done listening to me, though, be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. On tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to talk about how the Magic have established their physical identity and how they became a physical punch-first team and why that bodes well for the playoffs. We're going to talk about that tomorrow from Charlotte. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.